And that's why October baseball is the best.
You are Locked On MLB, your daily MLB podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, baseball fans, and welcome to Locked On MLB, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. This is the daily podcast. We talk about all of Major League Baseball. I am your host, Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully. Today's episode, with great enthusiasm, I might add, is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you get $300 in bonus bets. Use across the app. Download the app today. Find us at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter or whatever they're calling it these days, and on Instagram. I'm your pal Sully. I'm at Sully Baseball Podcast. And remember, the best way to get a hold of me is right here on the YouTubes. And you can leave a comment right here. And if you do, make sure to leave that hashtag Everyday Sully. It helps us find the comments. And we put some of the best ones right here on the show. Now, wow. Let's do the trivia question. Let's get everything we need to get done. Who was the only New York Yankee to hit an inside the park home run in the World Series? That was my trivia question. Now, Steve Colatrella, big Yankee fan. By the way, he said R.I.P. Mike Greenwell, one of the few Red Sox players I like as a Yankee fan. Mo Vaughn is another. As a Red Sox fan, one of the few Yankees that I liked was El Duque Hernandez, whose birthday is on Saturday. He'll be 93 years old. His trivia answer, my man Phil Rizzuto. Nope. Great guess, but incorrect. But it was another Everyday Sully listener, Big John 08865. Lou Gehrig. Yep, Lou Gehrig was the first New York Yankee, and I believe the only New York Yankee to hit inside the park home run in the World Series. Boom. Okay, now we got all that done. Wow. I've watched a lot of playoff. I've watched a million games in my life, and I love playoff baseball. I do have a soft spot in my heart for the Seattle Mariners, but they aren't the team that I grew up with. And the Detroit Tigers are a team that played with a lot of heart and a lot of guts. And they came to this fifth game in a best of 5 series. And this is the exact type of game that I just love. This reminded me of the games from the 1980 National League Championship Series, which is the greatest postseason series ever played. The 1991 World Series, which is the greatest World Series I ever saw in my life, against two teams I had no dog in the fight, Minnesota and Atlanta. This game between Seattle and Detroit is everything I love about baseball. There was only one nitpicky thing, that a managerial decision that I will get into later. But what transpired was 15 glorious innings of baseball. 15 innings of the type of baseball I love to see, which is clutch hits, smart plays, fantastic pitching, and great defense, and wiggling out of trouble. If you don't really know anything about baseball or just want to see a slugfest, a 3-2 game over 15 innings might sound dull to you. You'd be wrong, because in each of the innings, the 9th, the 10th, the 11th, the 12th, the 13th, and the 14th inning, every single time the ball left the fingers of a Detroit pitcher, the season was on the line. And in each one of those innings, the 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th, 14th, Detroit wiggled out of it. And in each one of those innings, the 9th, the 10th, to the 14th, Detroit had a chance to put Seattle on the ropes. And every one of those innings, the Mariners pitching got out of it. You got terrific hitting from players like Carpenter and Naylor. And Naylor basically manufactured a run by his lonesome, got himself a stolen base for his trouble. Carpenter got on base 6 times, 6 GD times, and drove in both of Detroit's runs. The two starters, Scubal and Kirby, were great. My one nitpick was, I don't understand why they took Scubal out. Scubal was throwing nothing short of a masterpiece. 2 hits, no walks, 13 innings, 13 strikeouts over 6 innings. First time ever in a deciding postseason game that someone struck out 13 with no walks. And Scubal threw 99 pitches. Okay, he threw 99 pitches, but the 7th wasn't one. And I would have sent him out there. I would have absolutely have sent him out there. And I posted something on the thing called Blue Sky, which I almost never go on to, asking that question: why is he out? I would have ridden Scubal absolutely to the end, absolutely. And I think they were pretty quick to the hook of Kirby. Now I know that he had a rotten history pitching to Carpenter, but the guy they brought in, Spire, let up a home run. But here's the deal: after that home run, and after the Rivas 2-out RBI in the 7th inning, the two pitching staffs locked antlers. And it wasn't just 1-2-3 inning, 1-2-3 inning. It was phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal, watching these two teams play the brand of baseball that you want to see in the postseason. The Detroit Tigers did not want the season to end, and the Seattle Mariners were determined to not have this season end. And the way they both played, it became sad that one team had to lose. And every time I thought, you know what, that they brought in one pitcher too many, or Montero's going to blow this, he walked a batter, or Melton let up a walk and a hit, and this game's over. No, they wiggled out of it. And they got a pair of double plays that were unbelievable. And they ended, the Tigers ended 2 innings in extra innings where the season was on the line, where a base hit, an extra base hit, or sometimes it's just a single, would have clinched it. And another time it ends with Robles being thrown out trying to steal. And every time it happens, oh my God, they go to another inning. It goes to another inning. Montero was unbelievable. Vest, who's been fantastic this postseason, struck out 4 batters at 2 innings with the season on the line. Melton wiggled out of it. And you just saw the Tigers you are not going to beat us. You were not. And then there was that inning where you had the leadoff walk, and then you had the weird play where it was a hit by pitch, where it was who was the one? It was was it a Rosarena or Robles? I can't remember. It must have been Robles, where the ball hit the bat and then his knuckle, or was it his knuckle and the bat? You couldn't quite see. It was controversial, but in the end, that wasn't what decided it. There was a play where they tried to pick off the runner at first base, and the ball went away and they advanced, but that's not what decided it. Cal Raleigh got his first pass ball in all year, but that's not what decided it. And I'll tell you the reason I'm harping on that, about that's not this weird thing didn't decide, that weird thing didn't decide it, is the thing in my mind that made this game great in a way that you will remember how well the two teams played, as opposed to the game we saw the other night, where it all came down to poor Ryan Keckering making a bad play. And he should not receive the full blame for that game, but that's what's going to happen. That's not going to happen with this game. And I'm going to break down why, and why this type of game is the games that I just absolutely love. All right, let's hear about our friends over at FanDuel. The NFL season is underway. Now, I'm focusing on Major League Baseball, but a lot of you are football fans, and FanDuel has an offer that you don't want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5. They get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 of bonus bets to use across the app. Now, sometimes you want to use a parlay. You want to sometimes try player props, and sometimes you want to follow the live lines during the game. FanDuel has you covered. It makes watching football even more exciting when you got a little something riding on it. So whether you're a casual fan like me or love diving into the stats, I almost said the seats, FanDuel makes the game day experience so much better. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. That's FanDuel.com. There was an amazing play where the Tigers had runners at first and third and one out, and there was a hot shot to the third baseman of Suarez, who threw it home for the out. There was a couple of times where it looked like the Mariners were ready to to end it, and you had the great double play back to Montero, to Torres, to Torkelson out of the inning. And it wasn't Montero throwing the ball away. It wasn't Polanco throwing the ball away. And there was one moment towards the end of the game that I found myself, even though I was rooting for the Mariners, it got to the point where I was like, both of these teams deserve it. Both of these teams deserve it. And Flaherty, who looked really wild when he came in, he wound up walking three batters, but he tightened his belt, and he threw two shutout innings. And they were using starting pitchers like Castillo and Gilbert out of the bullpen. And Melton and Flaherty were up with starters as well. Both teams were just wringing out the towel. And the Canely loaded the bases. And they made the decision to walk Rodriguez, even though Rodriguez had a bad series. Let's say, but he had a bad series. But they realized, you know what, it's not worth it. You can get another double play and get yourself out of it. And Polanco came up. And Polanco got the count to 3-2. And I'm watching the game. I'm sitting at the edge of my couch. I actually watched I took Eleanor for a walk for part of the game, but it was so GD long that eventually I was sitting on my couch watching it. And when it was 3-2 strikes, and Tommy Canely, he didn't have the best control, had to throw a strike because a bases loaded walk would have ended the game and ended the series for Detroit. I had a flashback. The flashback was to the final game of the 1999 National League Championship Series. It was not a seventh game, but it was a game that the Mets desperately needed to, they need to win in order to survive. And also they would have been a team that was down 3-0, forcing a seventh game. And they had a lead at one point. They had a lead and they blew a lead at one point. And you got to the bottom of the 11th inning of that game, and it was an unbelievably great game, just back and forth. The Mets were down early, 5-0, but then they climbed back, and then they took the lead in the 8th. They blew the lead in the 8th. They took the lead in the 10th. They blew the lead in the 10th, and then finally in the 11th inning, Gerald Williams doubled, and with one out and the bases loaded because of a pair of intentional walks, Kenny Rogers wound up walking Andrew Jones to bring home the winning run. And a really, really great game. A game where Ozzie Guillen wound up getting a single to score the tying run in the 10th after Todd Bratt hit a sac fly in the 10th. It was a great game back and forth, phenomenal game back and forth. But all anyone remembers from that game is Kenny Rogers walking Andrew Jones with the bases loaded. Yesterday's game between Los Angeles and Philadelphia was a very good back and forth game. It wasn't a slugfest like the 10-9 game between the Braves and the Mets back in '99, but it was shutout ball being pitched. But all anyone's going to remember is Orion Keckering. And I started thinking specifically of the Kenny Rogers walk to Andrew Jones and Tommy Canely on the mound. And even though, as I said, I was rooting for Seattle, I found myself saying, throw a strike. Please, Tommy Canely, throw a strike. Because if he walked Polanco, that was the only thing anyone would remember from this wonderful game, was the bases loaded walk. That would be the only thing anyone remembered. And this would be the Tommy Canely game. that all these pitchers, Scubal, Finnegan, Holton, especially Vest, Melton, Montero, and Flaherty, all pitched their guts out. All did everything. The one flaw was Finnegan letting up the tying hit to what's his name, to Rivas. That was the one flaw in the entire bullpen, and Canely walks the bases loaded. That would have been it. And in a game this terrific, I thought that would suck. That this would be a game about who lost it instead of who won it. And instead, he threw a strike. And Polanco got a clean hit. You can't complain about that, even if you're a Detroit fan. Canely threw a good pitch, and Polanco hit it and drove in the winning run. And I jumped up because it was such a thrilling game. It had a thrilling ending. But I was also so happy that the story of this game was going to be about two teams battling it out. I mentioned those two playoff series between the playoff between the Astros and the Phillies in 1990, back when the Astros were in the National League, and then the World Series between Minnesota and Atlanta. Those are the two best playoff series in terms of top to bottom that may have ever been played. And one of the great things about those two series is that neither one had the aura of someone making a brutal error or a terrible managerial decision. And in the case of Minnesota versus Atlanta, they were just two teams and neither one was going to give up. And in that, there were crazy double plays on both parts. John Smoltz pitching against Jack Morris the previous night. Kirby Puckett had the night of his life, but there are other players who had phenomenal games. The Braves played great. The Twins played great. In 1980, the Astros and the Phillies were just playing until they were leaving blood on the field. And there wasn't a critical error that made this, that, or the other thing. Instead, both teams rose to the occasion. And that's what happened tonight. That's what happened tonight with these two teams. And it made this game thrilling. And it made me feel like I was watching something special. I knew by the time we got to the 11th or 12th, this was a great game. By the time we got to the 13th, 14th, I thought this is an all-time classic. Because not just because of the length of the game. There have been 18-inning games. The Mariners played an 18-inning game just a couple of years ago. There obviously been longer games. But this was a game that was do or die for both teams. And both of them said, I'm not going to die. And neither of them did. Remember what I said about the series, the game that was played between Philadelphia and Los Angeles the other night? That really felt like Philly lost that game more than the Dodgers won it. I know the Dodgers made some misplays to give the Phillies their lone run, and the Phillies walked in a run and then made an error for the walk-off. The talk about that game was about the missteps of Philadelphia more than it was the victory of Los Angeles. This one, the Mariners topped the Tigers, but I can't say they beat them. I think they both played so great that by the time we got to the 15th, I kind of acknowledged I'm fine with either one winning at this point. They're both so tough and so good. And this is why you're not going to see, look, there are great sporting events no matter what teams or what sport you follow. Obviously, I've seen phenomenal NBA games and great NFL games and phenomenal Stanley Cup finals. I get it. Each sport has their magic moments. But this is the game you can't run out the clock. And this is the game that at one point, it's a mano-a-mano situation. What do we have today? Pitching, defense, smart moves, intelligent baseball, and clear that when the moment got really, really intense, all the players stepped up. And the look that Bizzardo, the great reliever for Seattle, and that Montero had when they wiggled out of those jams, I just feel badly for people who don't appreciate how great this game is.
Guys, you've probably heard of Viagra or Cialis, or maybe you've even tried them. But if you're looking for something that goes beyond the usual pill, it's time to meet Rugiet Go Long. Now, this is not just another ED pill. It's a total game changer. Go Long combines 2 doctor-trusted medications in one dual-action formula so you can perform and go the distance. The effects can last up to 36 hours, and that's confidence all day, all night, even into the next day. And the process is simple. Connect with a board-certified doctor 100% online, and to prescribe your treatment ships discreetly right to your door. Ready to level up confidence in the bedroom? Head to rugiet.com, RUGIET.com, and use promo code LOCKEDONMLB for 15% off your first order. That's RUGIET.com, promo code LOCKEDONMLB. Make sure you use our code so we know that we sent you.
You know, there was one point I remember, one of the years when the Red Sox were in the playoffs, and I think it was 2018. It may have been 2021. I can't remember. Excuse me as I scratch my nose. Where someone asked me when the Red Sox had clinched and we were waiting for the other team to clinch for the next series. And someone asked me, "What do you want to see happen?" And I said, "I want to see the other team go the distance, and the final game go 15 or 16 innings, and they use all their pitchers." Well, that's exactly what happened for Toronto. On Sunday, the Mariners are going to be playing the Toronto Blue Jays. Now, the Blue Jays avoided Tarek Scubal for game 1, even if the Detroit Tigers won, because there was no way he was going to pitch game 1 after pitching on Friday. But now they've avoided him altogether. And they are not going to have, they're not going to have Kirby pitch, they're not going to have Gilbert pitch, and they're not going to have Castillo pitch. They're not going to turn to all of them. I mean, there's an outside chance they would have Castillo, but I don't believe that's going to happen, and neither do you. And so this Mariners team is going to have they're going to have 1 day's rest for everybody, and then going to face a really fresh and rested Toronto team. Now, I still think Seattle can beat Toronto. I still think that Seattle has the talent to beat Toronto. Toronto is terrific, and I swear I'm not disrespecting you, Toronto. I did a whole episode where I talk about how I disrespected them, and I apologize for that. I got a lot of great notices from people in north of the border. But I still think Seattle's going to win, and I'll tell you exactly why. It isn't because I have a soft spot in my heart for the Mariners, especially in the age of Mark Langston and Alvin Davis and Jim Presley and all of them. Here is why. This Mariners team finds ways to win, especially under tough circumstances. And if you don't believe me, they just defeated the Detroit Tigers 3-2. And 2 of those victories for the Seattle Mariners were games started by Tarek Scubal. If you had gone to FanDuel and said that that Scubal would pitch brilliantly, what did he throw? 13 innings, and he struck out something like 22 batters or something like that, and let up a grand total of 3 runs. He pitched like the ace that we all know that he is. And he pitched like an ace in both of those games. And guess what happened? Seattle won both of them. They have the talent to do it. Now, of course, Toronto could sucker punch them. They could be like, yeah, that's nice. And then boom, boom, boom. You have both teams who got the bye playing each other in the ALCS. So I guess the time off didn't hurt them. And by the way, if Milwaukee wins tomorrow, then 3 of the 4 teams that got byes will move on. And, slowly chipping away at the whole argument of, well, you don't want to play you don't want to play, or you don't want to have the bye because then you'll be rusty. Maybe some teams are figuring it out. But Seattle has the talent. Seattle has the hitters. So does the Toronto Blue Jays. If they start Gosman in game one against, I don't know who the hell they're going to start. Maybe they'll reactivate Chris Bosio for all I know. Toronto will again have the advantage in game one, but Detroit had massive advantages in both games 2 and 5. And remember, when the Tigers won that first game, and this was a really phenomenal series they had, but when the Tigers won that first game, one of the things that I said, and a bunch of people said, why the Mariners were against the 8 ball at that point was that, oh my God, they lost game one. Now they have to face Tarek Scubal. And then when they went into game 4, having a chance to win it 3-1, so you better clinch it now because you're going to have to face Tarek Scubal. And both times they had to face Tarek Scubal, they wound up winning the game. Not because they beat Tarek Scubal, but because they found a way to do it. So I have a lot of confidence in Seattle moving forward. But guess what? I've underestimated Toronto before. I'm not underestimating them. I think Toronto is going to wind up being an opponent for Seattle, eerily similar to what we saw with Detroit. I think Toronto's a better team than Detroit. But I think you may see a series with this Toronto team and this Seattle team, these two teams that are built with things like, and these are crazy notions, but depth in their pitching staff, putting the ball in play, playing good defense, and not just sitting around waiting for the home run. That's a brand of baseball that I can get behind. And so can you. And we're going to see what could be a fantastic American League Championship Series. Would it be as good as that 1980 series between Philadelphia and Houston, or that 1991 World Series between the Atlanta Braves and the Minnesota Twins? I don't know. Neither do you. But they're the type of team that's filled with good ball players, playing defense, good bullpen. We just saw how good the bullpen in Toronto was. They won a freaking bullpen game in New York, and we just saw how terrific the bullpen was in Seattle. That's what we have moving forward. That's going to be good. So thanks so much for making Locked On your first listen every day. For your second listen, find the all-new Locked On MLB Game Night, every game, every night until a World Series champion is crowned. Get local analysis on a national scale. Find MLB Game Night on Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts. And let's go to the new trivia question. We are going to have a playoff series between the Toronto Blue Jays and the Seattle Mariners. These are two franchises that were formed in the same year. They were the two teams from the 1977 expansion. And now they're facing each other for the title. Two teams formed in the same expansion year. The trivia question is, what was the first time a playoff series was played between two teams that were formed in the same expansion year? Put your questions right down here on the YouTubes. I've already done the part of signing off. So what that is left for me to say is talking about a modern classic that was not marred by errors or bad decision, but were just two teams that refused to lose. And bless you, boys, Tigers. You played great. And Toronto is waiting in the wings. This has been Locked On MLB. I am your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully.